From the News Channel 5 Network, this is MorningLine.
Good morning, everyone. Thanks for joining us on MorningLine. Nick Beres here on a Wednesday night. Dare say that we thought we would be in the middle of our gavel-to-gavel coverage of the Vanderbilt Rape Trial, but at this point, we now know it's been postponed until January 12th. But a lot happened yesterday, and a lot's going to happen between now and then. We will continue to follow it, and we will have our gavel-to-gavel coverage in the new year. But the important thing now is I invite you to join in the conversation, your take on the delay and the unusual circumstances that led to it. And we're going to be talking this morning with our legal analyst, of course, who's been with me and has been following this case very closely from the very beginning, Nick Leonardo. Good morning, sir.
Good morning, Nick.
You know, it's interesting. When we sat down yesterday to kind of set the table for this trial, I think we both said, okay, we're ready to go. Jury selection going to be underway, but we still need to wait and see what Warwick Robinson, one of the defense attorney's doctors, says about whether or not he needs this surgery now. And that's what happened, right?
That's exactly what happened. You know, we were talking about it yesterday morning, and I threw that out there and said, you know, there's still a possibility that it could be continued. And of course, that's exactly what happened. And I'm sure that Judge Watkins didn't do this arbitrarily or anything. I mean, it's obvious that, you know, Warwick Robinson really needs this surgery. Yeah. And, you know, so these things happen. We're all human beings.
Yeah, listen, and I know Warwick, you know Warwick. And there have been comments from folks that, you know, even I yesterday said just because of the circumstances, it looks bad. But in my opinion, and I've put this on my Facebook page too, and others have said, well, could he have, he's been trying to get a continuance, did he injure himself intentionally, is this real? We know Warwick. First of all, he would never do something like that. No. Two, I have absolutely no doubt the man is injured. He is hurt. And if, indeed, as he said outside the courtroom, he needs the surgery or he could sacrifice some use of his arm, I have absolutely no problem with what he's doing. It's just a very bizarre confluence of circumstances that led to this. But would you agree with me? I mean, there are those like, well, what's he doing? The defense trying to get a continuance here. What strings? No. It's just bizarre. But under no circumstance do I believe Warwick Robinson intentionally hurt himself, is making this up, or did this to try to get the continuance. I truly believe the man's hurt. And he needs this treatment, and if it means delaying the trial for a few months, so be it.
Well, and you know, from a defense lawyer's perspective, or any lawyer that's in private practice, once you've been hired to represent a client, and something like this has been set for trial, you know, you've marked off your entire week, as you know, you and I had for this, and so you want it to go forward.
Yeah.
You know, you don't want to have to come back and try it again or get a continuance. So I'm sure that he wanted it to go forward, but just
But now he was asking some in the week before about, you know, I need a little more time because I think they wanted to get some experts cleared that they could bring in, and the judge denied that. And so I think some people on the outside are saying, well, he'd been asking for a continuance, couldn't get it, and then now how conveniently his arms hurt the day of the trial. And as I said, again, just on the outside looking in, if you don't know any of the details, you don't know the man, he's like, that's odd, that looks bad. What's going on here? But that's appearances. The truth in my mind, under no circumstances do I believe this has been contrived. He's hurt, and I wish him well, and I hope they fix his arm, and we'll do this in January.
Yeah, but you know, the interesting thing is going to be the motions that are probably going to be filed in the upcoming weeks. That, you know, we've seen some of the motions already, but I believe there'll be a few additional motions that are filed that's going to change the landscape of this case.
Yeah. Okay. So let's just get into some of the details real quickly of what we did see happen. Some during jury selection, and there was a portion of it. And did it give you some insight, you think, into where the defense is going or where the prosecution is going based on some of the questions they would ask? Did you get any kind of sense at all?
Absolutely. And, you know, I mean, that's an astute observation because, you know, both sides have experienced lawyers, and both sides are, you know, you're not supposed to directly argue your case to a jury when you're asking them questions in voir dire, but, you know, I'm sure the state's up there talking about, you know, maybe showing a copy of the statute talking about penetration and however so slight and whatever, you know, they're probably arguing that, and the defense team would be, you know, somewhat arguing a jury charge or something that benefits their particular side. So both parties, both lawyers got to see where the other lawyer was going, and they're, you know, they can tailor their arguments accordingly going forward. So both sides have kind of tipped their hand a little bit, and so, you know, both have a little bit of an advantage going into this next trial on January the 12th. Yeah,
I mean, we've heard on the defense side kind of questions about drinking and how you feel about drinking, because we think they're going to try to bring up the fact that the parties involved here were intoxicated, so that might be part of their defense, I suppose. The prosecution, you know, just trying to, I think, get a gauge on what the jurors may think about, you know, sexual assaults and what kind of history they've had on that. I think we still kind of have a pretty good handle on what the evidence is in this case.
That's not going to be changing.
That's not going to be changed in any way. So, you know, yesterday, if you're the judge sitting here right now, your take on this, and I think Judge Watkins to me is an amazingly cool customer. He never really shows any temper. I mean, there have been a lot of things leveled back and forth in the courtroom, and he's calm, he controls himself, and he issues, I think, well-reasoned decisions. If you're him, there probably is some frustration, like, you know, I lined everything up and now we can't do this, but what do you think?
Well, I mean, I guess, you know, I don't want to cloak, you know, arrogance and humility by seeming to think I know what the judge is thinking, but you know, if I'm Judge Watkins, I may be concerned about them trying to bring back a motion for a sequestered jury, especially after you know, the first day of questioning, and you know, there's, you know, half of the jurors were dismissed. But on the flip side of that, what is very interesting in this case is that they started late yesterday, or was it? Yes, it was yesterday. They started late, and as a result, they got jurors that had already been dismissed from other cases and were sent back to the jury assembly room. Those jurors were dismissed for whatever reason. We don't know what that is. So, you know, they didn't have a fresh jury pool. And so they'll have that going forward. But, you know, depending on, I think that there was 30 of them or so that were dismissed the first day. So I'm thinking that, and based upon those lines of questioning, that you might see a motion for a sequestered jury. I think that, you know, that was a motion that was made last time, was 3 or 4 days before trial. That takes an awful long time to put together a sequestered jury. It's a lot of work, and it's a lot of work caring for those people and also getting jurors who are able to serve in a sequestered jury capacity. So we may very well see that motion arise again.
Yeah, that could come up, because they did bring it up briefly, and the judge said you can't ask for a sequestered jury one day before trial, but that could come up. I do think that I don't anticipate them asking for a change of venue. I had a chance to talk to some of the defense attorneys, haven't talked to any of the prosecutors, but I got a sense from them that they still believe they can get a good jury, a fair jury here in Davidson County, even though clearly those polled and talked about during selection, some 90% acknowledged that they had heard of this case. And quite frankly, I've got to wonder what rock the other 10% were living under, that they've never even heard of this case if you live in Davidson County.
You know, you have to have heard of it, but, you know, contrary to, you know, popular belief, there's a lot of folks that don't watch the news religiously.
Oh, I know, and I understand that, but that's my point, is I understand a lot of people miss things on a day-to-day and they don't watch news religiously, but this thing has been everywhere to such a degree over the past year that I really find that someone who has absolutely no inkling at all that there's a Vanderbilt rape case is a little out of touch with the world around them. And I may be wrong, that may not be fair for me to say, and you may be sitting there saying, Nick, I didn't know about it, now I do. Fair enough, then I'm wrong. But I mean, I do sometimes wonder about jurors when they come in. I'm not sure I'd want a juror who has absolutely no clue about it on my jury.
Well, and you got to watch, and you have to guard too. You're always looking for that person who is in, you know, as a prospective juror seated, that is, you know, maybe not answering questions truthfully because they want the book deal, they want the 10 minutes of fame that they may get out of sitting on this particular jury. But the issue is not, have you heard of this case? That's not the problem. The problem is, can you set what you've heard aside and be fair and impartial? And that's what they're looking for.
I think most good people can. You hear it, just because you know about a case doesn't mean you can't set your opinions aside. And if you can't, you got to be honest and say you can't. Real quickly, before we go to the break, and we'll take phone calls, 737-7587, because I want your take on how it all played out. I think about the alleged victim in this case, and for any victim, especially a sexual assault victim, because of the nature of the crime, it's very, very difficult to face a trial. My understanding is that this woman has since moved out of state, had to come back for this. We now know that this delay is just a circumstance. Warwick Robinson suffered a genuine injury to his arm. He needs it fixed, and I understand that it has to be done so he doesn't lose the use of his arm. And so that's no one's fault. It's not his fault, and I believe it to be genuine. But still, for her, sitting there thinking, all right, I came all the way here, and it's got to be hard for her. She's got to go back. This hangs over her head until January. She's got to come back, and you hear about victims and getting things done in a timely fashion, and here's yet another delay. I just feel for her.
Yeah,
I feel for her going through this. I know, you know, the defendants are innocent until proven guilty, but what she's going through at this point I sympathize with her.
Well, with all parties involved, there's a lack of closure as we sit here today.
Yeah, but you have said in the past, in terms of continuances, when it comes to defense attorneys, what do you like to tell me?
Well, I've never met one that I didn't like.
Yeah, if you're a defense attorney, continuances, they like it. Get for no other reason, it means your clients get to remain free on bond.
That's exactly right.
For a longer period of time. And frankly, this means that Vandenberg and the others, depending, I don't know if they're going to be found guilty, but they're going to be home for the holidays.
Well, and things change. You know, witnesses move on. You know, people die, and you know, there's other ways that you could gain a tactical advantage through a continuance. It's happened quite frequently. I've had one case where a police officer got arrested during the continuance period.
So you never know. That's a very good point. We say it's set to go January 12th. But who knows if between now and then a lot of things could change. Witnesses change. John Herbison could tear the meniscus in his knee and need surgery. Nah, just kidding. All right, let's take a phone call before we go to the break. Joe, good morning.
Good morning, Nick.
Hey, Joe.
Hey, I called yesterday. I just wanted to clarify. I didn't by no means infer that Mr. Robson was faking an injury or anything like that. The point I was trying to make, if he has surgery, it was going to delay it for several months. And the second thing is, this just been, this thing has been drug out, and as you talked about this morning, there's so many other things that can come up between now and the time that they've said, I think January the 12th, that can change this thing again. And this is costing the taxpayers a lot of money for all these delays and stuff to go on. So it's just, the point I was trying to make is this I've never seen a trial that's been delayed by so many different things, not just one thing. And I didn't doubt Mr. Robinson's injury by no means, and I know shoulder surgery was going to be 2 or 3 months recovery time. So that's just my point.
No, good point. I appreciate you clarifying, because I agree with you. Again, we know Warwick, he's a fine lawyer, and if he needs to have this surgery and heal up, I don't know how long it takes to heal something. I don't know which shoulder it is for him, but it is interesting, though, that, it's not something where they can just reschedule. Let's say he was able to heal up and, maybe go 2 weeks from now. The reason they couldn't have scheduled it, say, for later this month, after he's out of the hospital and feeling better, is because there's already a docket set. They had to bump all the way ahead to January to find another week that's open for everyone involved.
Well, and the people who are incarcerated and not on bond that are awaiting trial, their trials come before people that are on bond. Even if you're in jail waiting a trial on, a multiple offense DUI, you would come before a murder case, or in this case, a rape case, where the individuals were on bond. But Joe is exactly right. It does cost the taxpayers a whole lot of money. But if they don't make the right decisions and the judge doesn't ensure that both sides get a fair trial, they will have to try the case twice, and that's going to cost a whole lot more money.
That's a great point. And we should say that it's not like there's been, Joe, a bunch of delays. I mean, this trial was set for November 3rd. This is the first one. It just was a long time coming. They set it for November 3rd, even though this assault happened last June, of last year. That's the way sometimes things go.
I've got a criminal trial in Clarksville that has been it's been set for trial, and it's been continued now maybe eight or 9 times, and it's been going on for 2.5 years. So it happens because he's on bond, really, is why.
Yeah, wheels of justice turn slow. All right, let's take one more call before we go to the break. Eli, good morning.
Good morning.
Hi, how are you?
I'm good, and I love your show.
Thank you.
But my comment is, you were talking earlier about how people might not have heard of this case. Mm-hmm. Well, that's true, because I watched the Casey Anthony trial from start to finish. I was mad as all get out, but I watched it. Anyway, there was people, when they were picking jurors, that had never heard of her, or the case, rather.
Well, you're absolutely right. It can happen. Now, Casey Anthony's a different case. I'm guessing in the locale where she was being tried, there was a heck of a lot more publicity. So the locals there, but Perry March, just to throw that case out, huge case. The Perry March case several years ago, maybe some of you aren't familiar with it now, but it was huge here. We went and chose a jury in Chattanooga, and it got some statewide play. The jurors just down the road in Chattanooga had no idea who he was. That's different. So when you're out of town now, Casey Anthony, of course, became a very big national case.
That's right.
And most of us, but I could see how on a national scale, especially if you don't watch some of the national news, you wouldn't know. But when it's in your own backyard, and it's on the front page of the paper every day, and there's all the news stories reporting it, and it's online, and to have absolutely no clue whatsoever, I'm not saying no to the details, but to know nothing about a case, it's just someone who maybe is disengaged, and I wonder how if I'm selecting a jury, I wonder how disengaged that person is going to be in other elements of life as well.
I guarantee you they know everything about Facebook. If it's on there, it's got to be true, right?
Yeah, that's exactly right. But I certainly understand people who ignore the news, because it can be depressing, and it's possible for some not to know about it. It's a good point, Eli. Listen, we got to take a break on that note. When we come back, the phone line's open, 737-7587. I know many of our viewers, I've gotten several emails, have been disappointed, at no one in particular, but they were looking forward to watching this trial. We will cover it gavel to gavel, hopefully, when it does occur on January 12th. But we'll talk more about what can happen between now and then, and certainly would like to get your calls, your take on how this all played out. So jump in. We got some lines open. We'll continue right after this.